Okay, this is chapter 22 from this book, The Medical Reformation, and we're going to be talking about estrogenic chemicals and their role in causing obesity, breast cancer and other common diseases, polycystic ovary syndrome and whatnot. So basically, like a couple things too. You look at women with breast cancer. What happens when a woman gets breast cancer? Her friends want to be supportive. They all run around with a pink ribbon saying we're raising money for breast cancer, but nobody really points out how stupid it all is. They're just giving money to the chemotherapy company. No one ever empowers the women and teaches them. Because, I've seen this for decades. It's very simple, okay? Armpit. The upper outer quadrant that used to be about 30% of breast cancer in the 1920s. Now it's 60% of breast cancer. You have shared lymphatics between the armpit and the upper outer quadrant. Well, what do you put in the armpit all the time? A lot of people are always putting deodorant in their armpit. And what's in there? Aluminum, a metalloestrogen. What's the preservative? Parabenzoic acids, for example, or other estrogenic preservatives. And you have shared lymphatics between the armpit and the breast. And so basically, you're rubbing Miracle-Gro that stimulates proliferation of breast ductal cells into the armpit across shared lymphatics every day. It's pretty stupid. And when you walk in a room, you say, "Hey, how you doing?" Humans, we greet each other by saying hello and maybe hand gesture. We don't sniff each other's armpit. It's stupid. It's just low IQ conformity to be wearing deodorant. All right, I think it's a typical stupid thing. And most of these cosmetic products, almost all of them have estrogenic preservatives. Like I said, in my bathroom, there's nothing but a transparent bar of soap. In my wife's bathroom, 55 cosmetic chemicals of every type. Okay. Other things too. So here's some of the things, the effects that estrogen has. High estrogen levels give a woman more premenstrual syndrome. After she delivers a baby, she's more prone to postpartum depression. She's more prone to morning sickness during the pregnancy. She's more prone to autoimmune disease and hypothyroidism. This was just the upper outer quadrant breast cancer lymph node metastases. She's also more prone to fibrocystic disease of the breast. And the significance is it can cause discomfort. It can cause, abnormal findings on mammography and lead to, having to get more mammogram follow-ups and all that sort of stuff. She gets more fibroid tumors in the uterus, fireballs in the Eucharist. Okay, she's more prone to endometriosis. She's more prone to endometrial carcinoma, uterine cancer. She'll have longer, heavy menstrual periods, which can be annoying for her. She's more prone to not ovulating, being infertile, to getting polycystic ovary syndrome. That's very common in the infertility clinics. When she's got real high estrogen levels, abnormally so during pregnancy, the baby, if it's a boy, for example, is more prone to be born with an undescended testicle or hypospadia, abnormal, inferior opening of the urethra in the boy's Johnson there. Okay, congenital birth defects. Okay, here's another thing too, is endocrine disruptors. This guy right here is a real famous researcher of estrogenic stuff. His name is Seralini. He wrote an entire book on this subject and on some of these chemicals. And what he said is we shouldn't even call them EDCs. They're typically called EDC to being endocrine disrupting chemicals, or you could say estrogen disrupting chemicals. He says they should be called ENDs or ENDCs. And he put the N in there for neurologic, because his conclusion after studying a lot of them is that about 80% of them are neurotoxic too. 80% are neurotoxins. Isn't that great? And then it's even better. He says, and the other 20% are quite often goitrogenic, toxic to the thyroid. And, look at soy. It's goitrogenic and it's estrogenic. And he says that and in my opinion, anything that's toxic to the thyroid potentially is neurotoxic, because if you mess up your thyroid, you're more prone to having neurologic problems. Okay, so here it is. This study suggests a substantial evidence. Big time scientist Seralini, he doesn't say that lightly, that approximately 80% of estrogenic disrupting chemicals operate via other mechanisms. And he talks about, they're often toxic to the thyroid. And then he collectively says they should be termed endocrine and nervous disruptors. Most ENDs are derived from petroleum residue, and their mechanisms of action are similar to those like so-called spam and electronic technology. So the bottom line is they're damaging to both the brain as well as the estrogenic parts of the body. Okay, so I thought that was a good paper. Here's another thing too. You see the typical fat American guy, and he, I like basic American guys, but man, a lot of them are pretty stupid. And they'll have a tendency to think, I'm fat, it's just a beer belly, as if that's something macho. It's not. You know, the big belly, they look like a pregnant female. It's not masculine. Okay, and there's estrogenic chemicals in the beer hops quite often. Um, they often get little breasts, you know, call them man boobs or moobs. It's sort of the apple body shape, if you will. Um, and then this lady, Jane Anspaugh, in that book, Fat Like Us, she made a good line. Jane Anspaugh, she said, being fat is like a modern scarlet letter. You walk around with a big belly. And she wrote her book, you know, I think she was over there in like the 80s or 90s, and I think late 1980s. And the reason that's relevant is there weren't that many fat people like there are nowadays. Nowadays, it's so common to be fat, and Americans have lost their shame. And it's not that much of a scarlet letter. Yeah, it's embarrassing. It's not as attractive. You're a guy, you're fat, you're less likely to be able to attract a woman. And likewise for a woman. Men are not attracted to fat women. They're just not. They can't help it. We're just programmed. Look, when a woman's fat, it looks like she's either pregnant or really old, okay? Because, you know, they start losing their shape when they're really old, some of them. If they don't eat healthy, they'll tend to get fat postmenopausal. And to the man's mind, the only time women were fat for our ancestors is when they were pregnant or really, really old. So that's not attractive to a guy because basically it's dangerous to approach a woman in a romantic way. Okay, number one, her boyfriend, her husband, her son, they might get pissed off at you and kick your ass. Okay, so it's a little dangerous to approach a woman. Plus, she'll sort of humiliate you, laugh at you, gossip you if she don't like you. You know, it could be embarrassing and even worse. So a guy, biologically, you're not programmed to approach a woman that you can't make a baby with. And I think part of the reason why men are so attracted to women, we love women, okay? We can't help it, is because, you know, biologically, if we weren't attracted to women, society wouldn't reproduce. And I think the woman's not as attracted to men. Nor, I told you this before, like you look at the personal ads in the dating sites, you know, the men will say 85% of the women are attracted. The women will only say about 15% of the men are attracted. So the woman's fussier because she's the one that gets pregnant and she's the one that has to deliver the baby. So she wants to be careful about what man impregnates her, whereas the man is a little more random and just wants to impregnate some woman, okay? Whichever one is the best one he can get, so to speak. You know, I know it's a little vulgar, but I think it's also true. So anyways, the woman is much fussier than the man is. Okay, now here's the chemical structure of estrogen. Basically, here's estradiol. So like an estrogenic hormone and di meaning two, all is alcohol group or hydroxyl group. So here's a hydroxyl group 1 and there's a second one, so it's a diol. That's estradiol. It's sort of the main estrogen in women. There's other ones, but that's the main one for our purposes. Here is a cholesterol structure. Basically, there's 4 cyclic rings, A, B, C, and D. And you'll notice in cholesterol there's a hydroxyl group coming off the A ring, but there's no double bonds in the A ring. That's an important point. Now look at the A ring in cholesterol. You'll have 3 double bonds, okay? And there's 6 carbons, so it's a cyclohexane ring, but with 3 double bonds that can, and the electrons in those double bonds can run around what are called pi orbitals amongst those 6 carbons. The point is they've got a lot of room to move, so they're very, very happy and comfortable there, meaning that it has very good shelf life, stability. This combination of an aromatic ring with the 3 double bonds, also called a benzene ring, with great shelf life stability, and then the hydroxyl group projecting off of it, that is very shelf life stable, and it's also very antimicrobial to prevent mold growth, for example. These companies, they want to prevent mold growth because if mold grows in their product, it gets sent back to them. They don't make any money. They got to pay for the shipping, lose the product sale. Okay, so anyways, that's why phenol groups are in everything. You'll see this in tons and tons of preservatives. There's lots of variations of it. There's lots of industrial chemicals. And that's why you're wasting your time to ever try to get these companies to ban them, because they can always make a variation on them. All right, but you need to know that's what's going on. Benzene ring with the hydroxyl group, that's going to come up all the time. Okay. Oh, by the way, if you ever hear the word benzel or phenyl in a compound, that means, you know, the phenyl sounds like phenol. Benzel is related to the name of it. We're not going to get into all the chemistry of it, but if you ever hear those 2 words, you can bet whatever you're dealing with, if you're reading like an ingredient label, it's an estrogenic chemical. Okay, here shows what's happening inside the body. is that, again, here's the aromatic ring, the A ring, but with 3 double bonds in it, and there's the hydroxyl group. But this hydrogen is shared between the hydroxyl group of the estrogenic chemical and a oxygen on an estrogen receptor. So the estrogen receptor forms a hydrogen bond where they share this hydrogen between both of these oxygens. Okay, and that's really important to know because biologically our ancestors didn't have much competition for this site. All these modern chemicals are just new in the last 50 to 100 years. So they're able to get access. You can say this estrogen receptor is rather promiscuous. It's not very fussy who it binds with, okay, who it sleeps with. Okay, it's promiscuous, okay. All right, now here's a typical estrogenic chemical situation. Here is bisphenol. Bis means bi, it means two. Bis is two. And when you say bis in chemistry, it means that there's two of the same thing on the molecule, but they're on opposite parts. They're not right next to each other. So here's a phenol group here, and here's a phenol group here. So there's two phenols, bisphenol. And they just call it Bisphenol A. There's a couple carbons in here in the middle. All right, so anyways, people got pissed off. Bisphenol A, it's neurotoxic. It's a mitochondria inhibitor. It's estrogenic. People didn't like that. Increased the risk of cancer. So they said, we don't want this. It should be banned. So some of the companies started banning that. And you'll see a plastic bottle say BPA free. But it's really a joke because they can just put anything in the middle here, like a sulfate group here. And then what happens is you still got the phenols on each side, so it's still estrogenic. Doesn't really change anything in a significant way. And that's what companies do all the time. And that's why, again, why I say it's a waste of time to try to change the company. A smart move is just educate yourself and avoid this stuff. If you're going to have, like, bring a bottle of water, with you to work, have filtered water from your sink, like reverse osmosis, and store it in glass or stainless steel. If you're drinking water every day, you don't want to be drinking it out of plastic. That's not ideal, at least. You can't completely avoid exposure to these things, but you can minimize it. Okay, so now I'm going to show you another chemical here. I can't fit it all on the screen, but we don't really need to. The point is, here is nonphenol, like used commonly in dishwasher, laundry detergents. It's another estrogenic chemical. It's also an obesogen. Estrogen is a fat storage hormone because a woman's, when she's pregnant, her estrogen levels go up and it's telling her to store more weight. The baby might need that for energy. So again, you've got the phenol group on here, the aromatic ring, the benzene ring with the hydroxyl group. Okay, so that's antimicrobial. And then you've got a lot of stuff attached to it, in this case with a detergent. So you get what's called, it's amphiphilic, like an amphibian can live on land and water. So in the sense, amphiphilic means that it's polar or nonpolar. The hydroxyl group is polar with the oxygen there because it has a much different electronegativity than the hydrogen, meaning a desire to grab electrons, whereas the electronegativity between hydrogens and carbon is very similar. So this remainder of the molecule is nonpolar. Okay, and something that's amphiphilic, it can exist in both an aqueous water-like solution and like a lipophilic oily type solution. So these things are used in soaps and detergents to be able to pull grease off the plates, for example. And this is also why I don't, if you're not cooking with oil, I don't even put my stuff in the dishwasher. I just rinse it off. And like for my laundry detergent, I don't even use laundry detergent. And that way I don't get all these estrogenic chemicals, because otherwise it'll sit on your clothing all day long. Your skin is designed to keep water out. That's why you can swim in the water and not immediately gain a bunch of weight from the water being absorbed into your body, because your skin is primarily like lipid and it keeps the water out. But in chemistry, like dissolves like. And what that means is the lipid of these estrogenic chemicals in all your personal care products, your laundry detergent, your dishwasher detergent, it can be absorbed right through your skin. So that's why I don't like putting any detergent on there. And so you think about it, if you're going to put laundry detergent, what's in that laundry detergent? Number one, it's typically made in a BPA or a BPA-like plastic bottle. Number two, this nonphenol is estrogenic, okay? And if it's in a plastic container, the plastic will often have phthalates in it. It's another type of plastic conditioner to shape the bottle. And so you'll be putting 3 estrogens onto your clothing right there. Then if you use those dryer squares to help prevent wrinkles in your dryer, those also tend to be estrogenic. So there's 4 estrogenics right in your chemical. And then they go on your clothes, and your clothes are in contact with your skin, all the time that you're wearing them. If you drink something estrogenic, let's say milk with estrogen in it, your liver will clear about half of that estrogen. It's called the first pass effect when it comes up from the portal vein from your gut to your liver. They're connected by the portal vein, and then the liver will clear a lot with the first pass effect. The liver helps detoxify a lot of things in the body. The point I'm making is when it's on your clothing, it just goes right into your blood. There's no first pass effect with the liver. So you're sitting there exposing yourself to estrogenic chemicals all day long. For what? Okay. All right. Yep, so that's why I don't use laundry detergent or dishwasher detergent. Okay. I don't even use shampoo on my hair. Not that I've got a lot of hair, but I found that it makes no difference. So I just stopped using it. So this is another way you can save money is by being a minimalist, you know. And, you know, low-fat vegan diet makes you better looking. You got better blood perfusion to your skin and stuff. I'm 60 years old, you know, and I got better perfusion to my skin and my energy level is high. You know, I think you've heard me tell that story before about my wife, how she's got all these chemicals and wrinkle creams in her bathroom, 55 of them. And I said, you know, why you put all that stuff on yourself? It's full of estrogenic chemicals. They're toxic. They increase your risk of breast cancer. She's like, you don't understand. A woman would rub shit on her face if she thought it would make her more pretty. And I said, well, that's basically what you're doing. And she goes, you're just jealous because you're not aging well. You got all these wrinkles on your face. She says, right there between your eyebrows, you got a big bitch line. You really need some Botox. And I'm like, she's just jealous. I'm aging much better than she is. She was a cosmetologist before she became a doctor, so she's kind of knows all that stuff about wrinkle creams, but I think it's a big joke. Because with a vegan diet, you get better perfusion of your skin. So you just have that glow of vitality. You have better perfusion of the arteries to your brain, so you're able to think more quickly. You can maintain that youthful vitality. Okay, the main thing that ages people is their arteries all get plugged up. So with the low-fat vegan diet, you don't get it. You know, it's kind of like Dr. Esselstyn said, if you don't want atherosclerosis, then don't eat the things that cause atherosclerosis, which tends to be high-fat things, and it also includes estrogenic chemicals. Okay, then there's a lot of other things. There's all kinds of things that have estrogenic chemicals in them. For example, this red number 40 has estrogenic effects, and they're in a lot of these estrogenic these food dyes. They'll have these cute-sounding names, red number 40, like it's no big deal, but you know, there'd be these big petroleum-based chemicals that are real complex and they're toxic, a lot of them. I wouldn't eat anything with food dyes in it. And they put them in a lot of medications too. Okay, and they're in all kinds of things. They're in the sunscreens. You know, I don't use a sunscreen. I think sunscreens are kind of stupid and unnecessary. I mean, if you work outdoors in a job where you have to work outdoors all day long, maybe you'll need them, but a lot of times you just wear, I see a lawnmower guy, they'll wear a long sweatshirt and they'll wear a sombrero as a hat, you know. I was in Puerto Rico and I went to the beach and I had a sweatshirt on and long sweatpants and a sombrero, and some of my family members refused to sit next to me because they're so peer pressure sensitive. You know, I take it off when I want to get sun. When I don't want the sun, I just leave it on. I don't like wearing sunscreen. All these estrogenic chemicals. Benzophenone is a common one. Oxybenzophenone. There's a whole bunch of other ones. And also, I'll just stand outside. I don't like going to the beach and rubbing grease all over myself and sitting there all day long. I just stand outside for a half hour, get my sun, go back inside, do whatever I want to do. Also, these chemicals, they get absorbed into the blood. They've done tests, or some paper, I don't think I mentioned it here, but they said that they absorb into the blood and they can stay in there for days. In some of these places, they've banned some of these sunscreens because they're toxic to the marine coral life. In general, anything toxic to marine life is going to be toxic to humans as well. Let's see. I made a whole video about sunscreen, so if you want to watch that, that goes into much more detail about these things. I always am trying to be as simple as possible because I know that's the secret of being able to achieve things. Like, I don't have a lot of free time. So for me, my priority is do my job, make money for my family. My family spends all my money. I don't spend hardly any of it except to buy books. And then I want to write my books. I'm always writing a book or preparing a video or something. So anyways, what I'm trying to say is by being real simple, I generate a lot of time. And that's what I want to do. You only have so much time in life. You want to focus your time on what you care about. Okay, here's what happens with the liver. The liver detoxifies estrogen. When we have excess estrogen in our body, it goes to the liver. The liver deconjugates it. It adds what's called a glucuronic acid. You can think of that as being like a glucose with a carboxylic acid attached to it. And then the liver excretes it into the bile, into the biliary system. You know, and it'll go into the gallbladder briefly. Then when you eat a fat meal, the gallbladder contracts, squeezes the bile down into the bowel, into the duodenum. Okay, the second part of the duodenum is where the common bile duct joins with it. Okay, so then the bile flows into your duodenum, your small bowel, and it travels along, you know, to your large bowel, your colon, and then you defecate it out of your body. So by defecation is how we lower estrogen levels in our bodies normally. But here's the catch. There's two types of bacteria, two types of gut bacteria, the good ones and the bad ones. So don't be confused. They're going to say, oh, microbiome this or that, take our probiotic, it's all BS. Just be aware of there's two types of gut bacteria, good ones and bad ones. The good ones are fed with fiber. The bad ones are fed with meat and processed foods. Okay, so if somebody eats a lot of meat and processed food, doesn't eat a lot of fiber, they're going to have more bad bacteria in their colon. The bad bacteria have more of this enzyme here called glucuronidase. And the glucuronidase will cut off the glucuronic acid that had been added right here to the estrogen. So E is for estrogen. This molecule here is the glucuronic acid conjugating it, meaning binding to it to make it more water soluble for excretion in the bile. So here's the problem. Once you deconjugate it, now the estrogen is reabsorbed into our body, so the person gets excess estrogen. So the typical American who doesn't know anything about this is they're eating meat full of estrogenic chemicals, they're drinking milk, often whole milk, full of estrogenic chemicals, they're drinking tap water full of estrogenic chemicals with no carbon filter, and because they don't eat enough fiber, they're reabsorbing their own estrogen this way, and then they're using a whole bunch of personal care products with lots of estrogen. So that's why breast cancer rates are going up, 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 and that's why women, there's tons and tons of women that have fibroid tumors in their uterus. They often go for hysterectomies at a young age. The hysterectomies at a young age, below age 35, predispose them to all kinds of problems. Because what protects a woman, why do women live longer than men? Because they menstruate, and that lowers their hematocrit, the number of red blood cells in their blood. And it also makes more of those red blood cells immature, so they're more flexible, more deformable. They pass through a capillary more readily, requiring less pressure, less blood pressure. So women have lower blood pressure when they're premenopausal. But if a woman gets a hysterectomy, then she becomes like a man in terms of her hematocrit goes up, her red blood cells are more mature, less flexible, and she gets more hypertension. Then she gets all this stuff, more atherosclerosis, more cancer, more congestive heart failure, more dementia, etc. Okay, so anyways, that's the trick. So what do you want to do? What's the smart thing to do? Eat more fiber so you'll have good gut bacteria. Use a carbon filter, which are pretty cheap to get the estrogenics out of your water. Okay, let's see here. I talked all about all this text right here. Oh, and here's fibroids in the uterus. And, you know, my attending used to call those fireballs in the Eucharist. You know, they're super, super common. And they can get real big. They can be uncomfortable. They can lead to the woman, you know, having heavy menstrual periods, lead her to getting a hysterectomy. And in Mayo Clinic, they had a study of like about 2,000 patients. They show they have, once they take this uterus out at a young age, before age 35, they get all kinds of increased problems from all that hypertension, coronary artery disease, earlier death, dementia. Okay, so here's a woman with, soy is one of the most contentious things on the internet, and I think it's because soy is so important for making Americans fat, sick, and stupid and infertile that any big billion-dollar industry is always going to have all these trolls. Okay, so all these trolls will try to say, oh, soy is a health food. There's a lot of industry-funded research that claims soy is good for you, but here's my attitude. Take a look at this lady right here. Okay, she's obviously got a good reason for estrogen. She's got magnificent breasts. You know, any baby would be lucky to, you know, feed from those. She's got a Virginia. All right, it's very understandable why she's got high estrogen levels. Now take a look at this plant. Where's the breasts? I don't see them. This is a soy plant. I don't see any breasts. Where is the Virginia? I don't see a Virginia here. Why does soy need sky-high estrogen levels, hundreds, thousands of times higher than other foods? Why? I mean, you should really ask yourself a question like this. Nature is frugal. Nature does not waste energy on things unless there's a good reason for it. So what's the point? Well, if the plant doesn't need the estrogen, it must have a reason for it. What's a birth control pill in a human? Typically something like EE2, ethinyl estradiol. An estrogenic chemical that'll prevent ovulation because the estrogen will be high when a woman's pregnant, so she signals not to ovulate. Well, guess what? Some plants, you know, like a lot of fruits, they like the animal to eat them. Chomp, 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 chomp. Then they walk down the path a mile away, they defecate, and now a new plant can grow at that spot. The seed can be nourished in the soil. But there's other plants They don't want to be eaten. They die when they're eaten. They get chewed up and they die. So they don't want to be eaten. So they use chemicals to make the animals that eat them sick. And guess what? I think that's what soy is doing. It has these high estrogenic chemicals to make the animal that eats it infertile, and they're also goitrogenic to damage the thyroid of the animal. So it's like saying, hey, jerk off, you want to eat me? Good luck. Here, I'll make you sick. Maybe you'll stop eating me anymore. Okay, so that's what I believe the soy plant is doing. And that's why it has these off-the-charts estrogenic levels. Okay, and flax also has even higher estrogenic levels than soy. And then, okay, then people are going to say, oh, well, hold on a sec. Soy only affects the good estrogen receptor, not the bad estrogen receptor. That's not true. I think it was the Mueller paper. It showed that it was almost the same amount. And Anthony J., PhD biochemist specializing in lipids, has a good lecture on this as well. It affects them both. I looked at the paper, okay, and I don't know if I have anything from it in this book here. Okay, so it does activate both the alpha and the beta estrogen receptors. And like I said, I got kicked out of a Facebook group because the people were pissed off at me for criticizing soy. It's often processed with hexane, a neurotoxin. It's often associated with having, I just showed a paper in my last video for this book, that it's often associated with having high levels of fluoride with it, having high levels of aluminum with it. Come on, soy is for chumps, all right? It's a good, litmus test for dividing the men from the boys in terms of ability to distinguish reality from BS. Okay, it's routinely sprayed when it's non-organic with glyphosate, which is a major toxin. Stephanie Seneff wrote an entire book about that, Toxic Legacy, about how toxic glyphosate is. Okay, why does soy often get called a health food? I think one of the tricks is a lot of times the population that starts eating soy is one that's switching from meat. So you end up with a confounding variable whereby what you're really looking at is, because they've cut the meat, it makes it seem like the soy is why they're benefiting, but the real benefit is they stopped eating the meat or the dairy, okay? Because soy is bad, but meat and dairy are worse for a person's health in general. But that's a common way to trick people. They can set up papers. Anything funded by industry almost always is bogus. They can set papers up. And you have to remember, the billionaire perverts of the world, what they really want to do is to sterilize people and to reduce the numbers of people on the planet. So anything that sterilizes people tends to get promoted, tends to get subsidized. Okay, this is the best book ever written on estrogenic chemicals. This guy, it's an absolutely brilliant book. His name's Anthony J. He's got a YouTube channel. I think it's called Dr. Anthony J. He's very clever, he's very funny, and he's really good on estrogenic chemicals. Like I said, I read a whole bunch of books on estrogenic chemicals. This is by far the best one. There's nothing even close to it. He doesn't know much about food. He's kind of a young guy, young macho guy. Young macho guys always think eating meat makes them big and strong like a lion. He doesn't know nutrition. But he's absolutely spot on with the estrogenic chemistry stuff. And he makes it entertaining. It's a fun, easy book to read. You could read this book, in a week and you'll enjoy it. It's you'll blow through it. It's great. It's one of my all-time best medical books. Okay, then this lady right here has done a lot of the research. Her name is Philippa Darbra. She's from, England. And she did a lot of estrogen research, including the stuff about deodorant being associated with increased risk of breast cancer. This book is more of a textbook. And it also talks about other chemicals that are be disruptive to human hormones. So this is a little more of a formal book, like something that would be used in a typically upper level chemistry class in school or endocrinology class or something. It's still a good book and it's still readable, but it's not a walk in the park. It's not as much fun. She's not going to be telling jokes. Anthony J is telling a joke on every other page, and he's clever and funny. Okay, she's more prim and proper, like a sort of a stuck-up English person, but she's nice. I mean, it's a very good book. She's done great research. Okay, flax has incredibly high amounts of estrogen. So here, take a look at this, soy, off the charts more estrogen than other foods. Incredibly high levels of estrogen is what you see in soy. And then flax is way higher than that. I haven't read many papers on flax because flax doesn't get promoted as aggressively. It does get promoted, and I'm not sure why. I don't see the benefit to it. I'm always scared of all these PUFAs. I don't think we need these PUFAs. I think people are overdosing on PUFAs. PUFAs are polyunsaturated fatty acids. And they go, oh, well, omega-3, it's required. It's an essential fat for our body. Yeah, well, we don't need hardly any. We get plenty from other plant foods. And we don't need that much, okay? Our body can convert that from the other plant foods in. Our brain cells, you can still remember stuff from when you were a child, all right? And that's because your brain cells don't turn over that much. You do have some synaptogenesis turnover, a little bit of neurogenesis, but not that much neurogenesis. So it's not like you don't need that much. You just don't. I've talked about this at length in other lectures. Okay, what are some problems caused by having high estrogen levels? We talked about all of this stuff. Why do so many women have higher estrogen levels? Sort of combining some text stuff. And we already talked about this. Oh, whole milk's a big one. Because nowadays the cows are engineered to make milk while they're pregnant. So that pregnant animals have very high estrogen levels. So when people eat it, they get that estrogen off the charts. And I think that's why a lot of children, because I've had friends, relatives, their kids are going into puberty too early, especially the young girls. And it's because I think that tell them, don't be drinking whole milk. Don't be drinking milk at all. They don't remove the estrogenic chemicals from municipal water filtration typically because it's too expensive, they say. So you get all this stuff in there. Besides the phenylestradiol, one woman takes a birth control pill, she voids it into the toilet, and then it goes back into somebody else's drinking water. The atrazine is a herbicide they spray on non-organic corn. That's a really powerful estrogenic chemical. That's the one that turns the male frog into a female. And there's a guy, he's a black guy. His name is Tyrone Hayes, okay? He was at Harvard, and he did some of the discovery research. He figured out atrazine was super estrogenic. So do you think they thanked him when he discovered this thing that could save people's lives and prevent breast cancer? No. They tried to fire him and take his funding away. And he actually stuck with it. I give the guy credit, man. He had the guts. He said, I'm very grateful for the education I had, and I'm going to put it to good use. And I'm standing by what I said. Atrazine is a major estrogenic toxin. And not only that, atrazine also inhibits complex 3 of electron transport in the intermitochondrial membrane. So it's also a mitochondrial inhibitor, which means it's also a brain toxin, okay? It's bad. I would never knowingly ingest that or want to be around that. Okay, storing drinks in BPA containers or with other estrogenic materials in plastic. Okay, we talked all about that. We talked about the detergents like non-oxynol 9, a typical laundry detergent. What else can a woman do to normalize her estrogen levels? Avoid meat and milk, right? Okay, don't use deodorants. Don't use all these personal care products. Store your water in glass. Get a carbon filter at least for your house water. You might even want to get reverse osmosis for your kitchen or move to a place with well water that doesn't have some things added to it like aluminum and F minus. Okay, F minus is not estrogenic, but it's still toxic to reproduction and to mitochondria. Okay, I talked about how the key thing is understanding that the estrogen receptor is promiscuous and will bind anything with a phenol group or analogous compound on it. Plus, there's some estrogens, we don't know exactly how they work. We don't know exactly why aluminum is such a powerful estrogenic chemical. It's called a metalloestrogen. Okay, we know it's a great preservative. We know it's in almost all skincare products. And then there was a monk in Florence in the 1490s named Girolamo Savonarola, okay, and he was a real sort of throwback and, one of these, fire and brimstone type of preachers, and he talked about the bonfire of vanities, vanity of vanities, and he was a really over-the-top kind of a crazy guy. There's a nice painting of him, and he was very persuasive initially. Even Sandro Botticelli, him and Rogier van der Weyden were the two greatest artists of the 1400s. He actually threw away some of his paintings because he was so freaked out by Savonarola's lectures about you're going to burn in hell unless you repent. And I'll actually tell you now, we're not going to get into Bible commentary here, but I can just tell you I've read a lot of Bible commentary, and there's some genius Bible commentators who think there's no such thing as hell. Now, I don't got time to get into all that, and are they right or not? I'm not sure that they're right, but they actually say the Latin stream of Christianity coming through Augustine and through Emperor Justinian sort of codified this idea of burning in hellfire for punishment of sins, but earlier scholars like Origen, they felt it was simply the idea of purification so that we would be we would grow out of our sins and want to sin no more as we became better informed. Okay, so we're not going to get into all that, but that's kind of interesting. I thought so. Anyways, why did I even bring that up? Because I said it's time to have a bonfire of cosmetic vanities. They call it the vanity cabinet. So bonfire of cosmetic vanities. Get rid of that crap. You don't need it. rub all that stuff on yourself. I think it's very overrated. Women who eat a low-fat vegan diet, they tend to stay skinny with a good blood flow to their tissues and their brains stay sharp. They're attractive, okay? I don't think these cosmetic overloads do that much. Yes, I do know when a woman puts on makeup, she can look hotter than she did before. Yes, that's true. But she can't wear makeup all the time, and her just intrinsic beauty, it sort of is what she is. You can't fake that beyond a certain point. Okay, you just throw them in the garbage. You don't need to burn them. Okay, let's see what else. Where can one learn more? Well, I'd say read those two books. There's a whole bunch of other books on the subject, but those would be the first two to start with. Read Anthony J's. If you want more, read Philippa Darbray's. Watch the videos at Anthony J's site. I don't know if Philippa Darbray has any videos. Maybe she does. For PCOS, polycystic ovary syndrome, I see a lot of this too. These big enlarged ovaries with the cysts, the follicles all in the periphery is characteristic. And that's a way for them to get their act together, to get their hormones under control, become low-fat, low-sodium vegans, okay, with no oil, and avoid all these cosmetic products and filter their water. And then some women will be, make a complete recovery from their PCOS when they do that. Okay, what's the other benefits? Oh, and then I remember, like when I was a kid in grade school, in junior high at recess, there were these girls that would sing these songs. Your mama don't wear no drawers. I saw her when she took them off. She laid them on the table. Them fruits ain't got no flavor. She threw them on the wall, and now the bugs don't crawl. I can still remember that from 7th grade. That just goes to show that when you have a rhyme, it makes things more memorable. If it's funny, it makes things more memorable. If the rhyme tells a story, it makes things more memorable. I mean, it's rather extraordinary. I can't remember almost anything from grade school, junior high, or high school, but I can remember every single word of that poem. Ding dong, your mama don't wear no drawers. I saw her when she took them off. So I wrote a little poem about estrogenics. It's not as good as the jump rope poem about mama's drawers. Okay, but feminization of frogs and fishes, messes up her cycle, turns baddies into bitches. Woman got no baby, man got no DICK. Okay, so anyways, it seemed funnier when I wrote it than it does now. But okay, causes of infertility. Excess estrogenic chemicals in food like atrazine on corn, the estrogenic chemicals in personal care products. I'm not kidding you. The whole processed food subsidized game in the tap water full of aluminum and estrogenic chemicals, it's designed to sterilize all the low IQ proles, okay? The billionaire perverts, they're sick and tired of all these low IQ proles crowding the world, wasting the resources of the world is how they say it, especially those annoying Christians who think humans are created in the image of the God, so they want to reduce their number. And they'll reduce it any way they can. And sterilization is a highly effective way to do it. They're going to tell all the native populations, you must stop reproducing. Meanwhile, we'll open your you-know-what down south and flood your country with more people. Yeah, that's how much they really care about that. Then the first priority is get rid of Christianity. Then they'll get rid of all the other stuff. But anyways, the soy in the food, we talked about soy, the aluminum, the psychological conditioning. Kids learn about health class. What they learn to do is put condoms on the bananas and become promiscuous, and then they get sexually transmitted diseases, which especially in women will scar off their fallopian tubes and make it hard for them to have babies. Also, women are sort of promoted education, and that, being a housewife, having kids is for losers. But in reality, the women who, have raised children, they end up happier than the women who don't have kids, is what I've seen. I actually was talking just today to this absolutely beautiful doctor, really smart. She's real nice too, but she's so busy with her career, she forgot to get married and have kids. And I know a lot of them like that, okay? They're so pushed that they gotta make money, get a good job, have a nice house, that, oops, forgot to get a husband, forgot to have a kid. Okay, let's see. And nowadays, the public schools even are castrating kids. So that's not good. Anyways, yeah, having kids is a real expensive pain in the ass, but they're also fun. So anyways, I hope that chapter on estrogen was helpful. In my other lectures, I've made previous videos where I go into a lot more detail about estrogenic chemistry and stuff, but I think this was, just a good enough introductory overview. You get the main points. It's not that complicated. Filter your water. Get a carbon water filter at least. Be a low-fat vegan. Don't eat meat and oils and processed food, and don't rub all these personal care products on yourself. And you don't need sunscreen. You don't need deodorant, etc. I think that pretty much covers it. So anyways, hope that was helpful.